Can I just first start by thanking the Czech government, particularly in their capacity as chairman of the Decade of Roma Inclusion, the Ministry for Regional Development and the Secretary himself, and indeed the Open Society Foundation as well, for the organization of this event, which we were honored and very pleased to be co-hosting with those organizers. As the moderator and the Deputy Minister already said, housing is key to much of what we hope will be a successful life when you start your life. So the conference maybe is overdue, but it's good that we have it now, and let's hope it produces as many tangible results, recommendations, identifications of good practices as possible. Let me just start with a very concrete case, a case decided by the Romanian National Council for Combating Discrimination in 2005, which typifies, we believe, some of the specific problems arising in this area. A group of Roma families were housed by a municipal authority on the site of a wastewater treatment facility on the outskirts of a city. They were given metallic shacks and wooden houses with electricity and running water. But 2 of the children died, and it was alleged that they had been poisoned by the toxic environment. Investigations revealed that this location had been chosen because of the opposition by the local population to other proposed, possibly better sites. The mayor responded to those allegations, saying that he was not interested in the health of Roma children. According to him, the Roma already had too many children. On the contrary, he said, the Roma should have been grateful because their electricity and their water bills were being paid for by the municipality. However, a finding of discrimination was made. The law was upheld, and the municipality concerned was ordered to pay a fine. As our distinguished moderator said earlier, sometimes we need to remind ourselves that there are principles which need to be upheld. Here, acts of justice were sanctioned and sanctions were enforced. Ladies and gentlemen, housing is intimately intertwined with one's quality of life. Bad quality housing affects our health. Remotely located housing affects our ability to go to work, to see a doctor, and maybe most importantly, to go to a proper school. Segregated housing perpetuates prejudice, intolerance, and fear between communities. The consistent approach of the UN Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, as well as the European Committee of Social Rights, is that the right to housing is much more than just the right to a roof over one's head. To quote the UN Committee, it is the right to live somewhere in security, peace, and dignity. Allow me to shortly focus on those 3 elements, also considered in the light of our agency's research findings on Roma and their right to housing. Firstly, many Roma do not enjoy security. They are frequent victims of eviction carried out on a selective basis by both public and private landlords. Sometimes these evictions occur violently and target large numbers, especially in the case of informal settlements or campsites. However, security issues in access to housing also emerge within Romani communities, leading to one family taking advantage of another. Secondly, many Roma are denied their chance to enjoy peace. Our research found that in the majority of member states, Roma live in segregated communities, either alone or together with another minority group, in low quality housing. And this makes them easily identified targets for violent attacks, as was regrettably shown in Hungary, Italy, Northern Ireland, and Romania. Thirdly, many Roma are often denied the ability to live in dignity. Their accommodation, as I mentioned, is often remotely located. not connected to public transport, to vital services such as health, care and education, places of work. Often the infrastructure providing electricity, clean water, sewage disposal is missing or is only there partially. And the quality of the buildings or shelter in which they live is substandard. But, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing inevitable about this situation. The Fundamental Rights Agency conducted case studies of local and regional initiatives on Roma housing in 6 EU member states. Outside you have seen the products of that research, which we invite you to take with you. We, and those promising examples of good practice, one of them in particular is called the Coexisting Village, which took place in Ostrava, here in the Czech Republic. Now, what did we learn from those case studies? Because so many aspects of our lives are tied to our housing situation, improving housing equals the opportunity to improve quality of life in general. But the opposite is also true. A lack of adequate housing is usually one part of a bigger problem of social exclusion. Just by giving someone adequate accommodation, we do not solve joblessness or a lack of formal qualification or training or exclusion from education. So a fully integrated approach is needed to create a sustainable and successful long-term solution. I will shortly identify 4 features of such an integrated approach to housing. Firstly, participation. That's very key in order to enhance the self-empowerment of Roma. Secondly, taking steps to shift the attitude of the local community. Very important. Thirdly, support for education, training and employment. And fourthly, inclusion of the majority population as beneficiaries. In all of this, we see a vital role to be played by regional and in particular local authorities. We like to call this often the need for a proper joined-up governance. My distinguished colleague Eva Sobotka, who is sitting next to me, will go into this in more depth after this particular panel session. A first positive feature what we identify with our research is the participation of the target population group, not just in designing the projects, but also in the physical task of construction. Secondly, a second positive feature is taking steps to shift local attitudes. Very often, as I don't need to explain to you, we find that public opposition to Roma settlements has a decisive impact on their location. And this was actually the case with my opening example. Again, during the construction of the coexistence village in Ostrava, those who were leading the project were very active in challenging stereotypes through the media. Here, the municipal authority received 2 petitions against the Roma moving into the area. At the start of the project, a petition was received with 700 signatures. But a second petition was presented later, after extensive coverage of the project in the media. It gathered this time only 30 signatures, showing an important shift in the local attitudes. A third positive feature is the provision of support for getting residents into employment. In some cases, this included vocational training, support how to write a CV or develop interview skills, practical but decisive skills. Several of the case studies included this component, which is important in creating self-sufficiency and in guaranteeing that families have enough resources to pay their rent and bills and therewith avoid eviction. Now this goes hand in hand with educational support for children. Again, in the coexistent village, it was reported that because of preschool and after-school classes, all of the Roma children entered the mainstream education system rather than being sent to special schools, which was the norm at the time. A final important feature which was presented in the coexistent village was that the housing project tackled a broader social, rather than only a specifically Roma problem. That is, Roma residents were housed in the village together with people from the majority population, who were also considered to be in need. And this had an important impact because it prevents resentment arising amongst the majority population that they are receiving less favorable treatment. Ladies and gentlemen, I will end by setting out two challenges. First, while the case studies we examined are very much to be welcomed and to be disseminated, they tended to be, however, isolated projects in that they did not form part of a national approach. An important exception to this is Hungary, where national funding for urban development is conditioned on anti-segregation plans. Secondly, these type of projects tend to be extremely high in costs relative to the numbers of people that they benefit. And this means that all types of funding have to be explored, including from the EU level, from charitable organizations, from private sources. It also means that the benefits of a fully integrated approach have to be viewed in the long term. It must be recognized that the cost can be justified in view of the important social changes that they will ultimately make. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be honest. The Roma continue to face serious challenges to the enjoyment of their right to housing. But the way to overcome these obstacles is clearer than it was previously. And over the next 2 days, we will have the chance to continue building approaches to improving access to housing for Roma, and most importantly, to finding ways making the right to secure, peaceful and dignified housing a reality. Thank you.